Hi, everybody. Kelly Nottingham here from Nottingham Professional Development and the Career Speakeasy podcast. Coming back after the Thanksgiving holidays, and I took a little bit of a break last week and did not submit a podcast episode or a video because I was taking a little bit of a break. And it brings to point some interesting thoughts here. So I had done a holiday guide that is a survival guide for the holidays. If you are interested in getting that, there is still time. You can sign up on my mailing list at kellynottingham.com. That's Kelly with an I, Nottingham like the sheriff.com. I will link to that below. You can still get that guide. In that guide, I talk about, and we have some exercises around expectations and how in the past video, I think I also talked about this a little bit about having expectations of others and how our expectations of others can really fray relationships sometimes. It can cause frustration for ourselves sometimes and frustrations for others when we have unrealistic expectations of what other people should be doing. Now, as part of this conversation, I had a good chat with a listener recently who said, okay, but if we lower our expectations too much, how do we keep from people walking all over us? And I thought this was a really interesting question. So this is something I thought I would address today really quickly in this video, because this is a deep, deep topic, but we're going to talk about this at a very high level right now. The idea of setting realistic expectations is different than the idea of getting rid of all of your expectations. So when we think about how we expect other people to behave, when we think about how other people should react, and when those expectations are not actually based in reality or in experiences that we may have had with that person in the past that might set those expectations. We've set an expectation way up here, and they're normally way down here in the expectation realm. That gap is where frustration and disappointment begins. Realistically, though, we do have to set realistic expectations for how we expect other people to behave. And what that really comes down to is understanding where our boundaries are. So what we find as acceptable behavior in regards to how we want to be treated and how we want others to be treated, and being clear about what those boundaries are so that our expectations of others are based on what those boundaries are. So I'll give a very simple example here. I am an animal lover, as you all know and have seen in some of my videos probably. I have cats and dogs, and I am a huge animal lover. I have zero tolerance for people who are cruel to animals. So my expectation for others is that they will treat animals well. Realistically, I know that that doesn't always happen, but because that is an expectation of decent behavior that I have, I know that if that expectation is overstepped by someone, that I am within my rights as far as my boundaries go to say, you are no longer welcome in my life, or I'm no longer going to deal with you, or I'm going to stand up to that behavior and basically enforce that boundary line. So I think this is where we can really begin to define what it means to have realistic expectations of others versus unrealistic expectations of others. So a lot of times we see these sorts of expectations come up when we're looking at, let's say, relationships, romantic relationships. And we may have an expectation based on the perfectionistic media that we maybe take in, where someone's spouse brings them flowers and gifts and is all constantly wooing them and, you know, showing them affection and whatnot. We see this in movies. We see this on television all the time, right? And if that is what our expectation becomes, we're probably going to be disappointed because the dishes will be not done sometimes. And there will be days when our significant other does not do what we expect him or her to do. And holding that person to unrealistic expectations or unrealistic standards is going to cause disappointment on every level. However, if we understand what our expectations are and what realistically might happen, and then we say to ourselves, okay, and then I have a boundary line of this, that this person, this is where I draw a line in the sand. This is unacceptable behavior. Everything kind of in between that is realistic is something that is manageable. Does that make sense? So you have manageable, realistic expectations, but knowing where that boundary line is between what is acceptable and what is not is where we set ourselves up for being more successful in our relationships, is where we set ourselves up for being more aware within our work of what is okay and what isn't, and defining those expectations and defining those boundaries for ourselves can help us know when a line has been crossed. If we don't know where that line is, we can't know if somebody's crossed it until they've already crossed it. And when they've crossed a boundary that isn't realistic and we get upset about it, that's on us for us to take that in and reflect on it. If they have crossed a boundary that we know about that is that line in the sand where we say that is beyond what is okay and acceptable for me, then we know that we need to deal with that situation. But I think that it's important to understand that interplay between unrealistic expectations, realistic expectations, and then having those boundaries of what is acceptable behavior and what isn't, and making sure that that is also realistic, based in reality, can help us to really set expectations that are going to clarify our relationships and help us feel more whole within our work and our lives. So that's it for today. Just a quick little musing on this topic, something that had just been jumping out at me as I had been thinking about this topic. So I hope this is helpful for you, especially as we get ready to enter into this busiest of holiday seasons with all of these holidays that are getting ready to happen, that we set some realistic expectations. All right, everybody, take care, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.